And in the heart of the fire elf, the winter finally ended. But spring in the north is fleeting, and the summer of the south is a furnace of a different kind. Weeks turned to months, and the wanderer cut through the grey expanse until the ice gave way to iron. The horizon was no longer white, but jagged with smokestacks and black stone towers. "Is this the edge of the world?" Astrid asked, leaning over the prow. "No," Signy replied, tightening the ropes of the sail. "This is the Iron Port, where the ocean meets the forge." The city rose from the water like a rusted beast, chained to the jagged rocks. Ships from 100 nations crowded the docks, their flags snapping in the warm, oily breeze. It smelled of tar, of gutted fish, and of men who had forgotten the gods. Signy steered the ship into a narrow slip, hiding the wanderer amongst the merchant barges. "Stay close," she warned, pulling her hood low over her pointed ears. "And keep thunder quiet. They eat goat in these parts." Astrid grabbed the goat's tether, looking at the rough men on the docks. They wore leather armor stained with salt, and many had tattoos of kelp wrapping their throats. "Who are they?" Astrid whispered, eyeing a group of men watching them. "The Drowned Brotherhood," Signy murmured, recognizing the marks. "Mercenaries who worship the deep. They are dangerous." They moved quickly through the mud-slicked streets, seeking shelter. The buildings were tall and crooked, built from the ribs of dead whales and scavenged timber. Signy found an inn called the Kraken's Tooth, a dark hole filled with smoke and noise. She pushed the door open, and the smell of stale ale hit them like a hammer. The room went silent, 50 pairs of eyes turning to the strangers. A woman with fiery eyes, a child with a missing finger, and a goat, a large man, with a beard braided with iron rings, stood up from a table. He blocked their path, a grin splitting his scarred face. "We don't serve barn animals here, little lady." Signy did not flinch, her hand resting on the hilt of her dagger. "The goat stays outside. If you have a stable." "And the girl?" The man sneered, stepping closer. "Does she come with a price?" Astrid stiffened, gripping Einar's rusty axe, which hung at her belt. Signy felt the heat rise in her blood, the old anger waking up. "The girl is not for sale," Signy said, her voice low and dangerous. "And neither is my patience." The man laughed, reaching out to grab Signy's hood. "Let's see what you're hiding, elf witch." But before his hand could touch her, a tankard of ale flew across the room. It struck the man squarely in the back of the head. With a heavy thud, the giant stumbled forward, turning around with a roar. Who threw that? In the darkest corner of the room, a figure sat alone. He was leaning back in his chair, boots resting on the table, sharpening a long knife. He wore a faded green cloak, the color of the deep sea. He did not look up from his blade, but his voice cut through the silence. "You are blocking the view, Bjorn," the giant growled. Forgetting Signy for a moment, "This is none of your business, wolf." The stranger stopped sharpening his knife and finally looked up. His eyes were grey, stormy and tired, but sharp as the steel in his hand. "I am trying to drink in peace," he said, standing up slowly. "And I hate the sound of bullies. Almost as much as I hate bad ale." The giant Bjorn roared and lunged, his massive fist swinging like a boulder. Kael didn't move until the last second. Spinning on his heel, as light as sea foam, he caught Bjorn's wrist, using the giant's own weight to send him crashing into a table. The wood shattered and a dozen tankards flew, splashing foam across the floor. Bjorn struggled to rise, but Kael's knife was already at his throat, cold and steady. "Go back to the docks, Bjorn, before you lose more than your dignity." The giant glared, breathing heavily, but he saw the death in Kael's grey eyes. He spat on the floor and stomped out of the tavern, followed by his silent brothers. The room breathed again, the tension breaking. Like a snapped mast, Kael turned to Signy, sheathing his blade, his movements fluid and precise. "The Iron Port is a graveyard for the unwary," he said, his voice like shifting gravel. "You should not have come here with a child and a feast on 4 legs." Signy stood her ground, her hand still gripping the dagger beneath her cloak. "I did not ask for a protector, Wolf, but I thank you for the distraction." Kael looked at her, his gaze lingering on her hidden features and his brow furrowed. "You smell of the forest and something else, something hot, like a smithy's forge." "I am just a traveler," Signy lied, "seeking a place to rest, and a ship to the west." Kael chuckled, a dry, hollow sound, as he sat back down at his table. "There is no rest in the port, and the only ships going west carry the drowned. Sit if you wish. I have paid for the table, and the shadows are free." Signy hesitated, then sat across from him, pulling Astrid close to her side. Astrid watched Kael with wide eyes, her hand resting on Einar's rusty axe. "Why did you help us?" Signy asked, her eyes searching his face for a trap. "Because I used to be the one who sent men like Bjorn to do the breaking." Kael leaned forward, the firelight catching the old scars. On his neck and hands, "I was a commander of the Brotherhood, years ago, their finest blade. I have done every terrible thing that might guarantee me a seat in the Grey Lands. I never thought I would become so soft as to help a stranger," and a little louse Signy's heart skipped. For his words echoed the spirit of the man she had buried. "Why did you leave them?" she asked. "The Brotherhood does not let go easily. I was a rebel in my own heart," Kael whispered, looking at Astrid. "I grew tired of the blood and the worship of the cold. Hungry depths. They call me a traitor now, but I am just a man. Looking for a shore that doesn't bleed." Signy felt a strange pull, a recognition of one outcast looking at another. "I am Signy," she said, dropping her voice to a whisper. "And this is Astrid, daughter of my Felag, the one I protect." Kael nodded slowly, his eyes softening for a fleeting second. As he looked at the girl, "She has the look of the North, but you are a different flame, aren't you?" Signy did not answer. Her secrets were too heavy to be shared over sour ale. But in that moment, under the glow of the flickering lamps, a pact was born. It was not a marriage of names, or a promise of love. Not yet. It was the meeting of two fires, in a world that wanted only to snuff them out. "Let me show you a place," Kael said, standing up and throwing a coin on the table. "A place where the Brotherhood and your ghosts cannot find you." They walked out into the foggy night, Kael leading them toward the river slums. But as they turned a corner, a shadow detached itself. From the stone wall, a red bird with wings like velvet fluttered silently above the rooftops. It watched them move, its eyes reflecting the distant burning lights of the city. Signy did not see it, nor did Kael, for their eyes were fixed on the path ahead. But the bird knew, for it carried the scent of the ironwood and the memory of ash. Kael led them into a shelter, built within the skeletal remains of a beached warship. The mist clung to the rotting timber, smelling of salt and forgotten wars. Inside, a small fire struggled against the damp. Casting flickering shadows, Signy sat by the warmth, watching Astrid fall into a deep, exhausted slumber. She looked at Kael, who was cleaning his blade. In the dim light, "Why did you leave them, truly?" she asked, the question burning her throat. Kael stopped his work, his grey eyes reflecting the dying embers. "I was their best sword, a commander of the drowned. But I saw too many red suns. I made a promise to a girl who saw the man." Behind the mask, Signy looked away, her mind drifting back to the obsidian throne in the ironwood. She remembered the day she stood before the High Council of the Firekin. The elders sat in a circle of shadow, their eyes like cold jewels in the dark. Brander, her father, sat upon the black stone, looking like a mountain of grief. "Do you know that binding your soul to a raider of the deep is madness? He has a name." "Father," she had interrupted, shocking the silent hall. "His name is Kael, and he has more honor than any elf in this wood." The word caused a murmur, like dry leaves catching fire, for no mortal name was allowed. Brander struck the stone table, his fist shaking the ground. With a dull thud, "Silence," he roared, then looked at her with a heavy, searching gaze. "Do you know that your union with this creature of clay will cost you your spirit? Your fire will be snuffed out. Your eyes will lose their glow, and you will become human. You will be as weak as the mortals, dying with the seasons." Like a summer leaf, Signy had stood tall, her amber eyes blazing with a final defiant heat. "I know the price, and I will pay it. For a life that is real, and your children," her mother, Hilda, had hissed from the shadows. "They will be outcasts, carrying a spark they can never use, a curse in their blood. I do not want them to have the power," Signy had replied, her voice steady, "and if a child is born with the flame, I will hide the truth from their eyes. I will never let them use it, so they can live without being hunted." The murmur became a roar of disapproval, for the power was sacred to the Firekin. Brander looked at his daughter, seeing the iron in her soul, and his anger faded to sorrow. Then you are no longer of the ironwood, and the Abatira are no longer your kin. Go to your morto, and let the winter take what is left of you. Signy had walked out then, not looking back, into the cold, white mist, back in the shack. The present moment returned, cold and damp. Kael was watching her, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. You have the look of a woman who has burned her bridges, he said softly. I am a ghost of a life I no longer own, she replied, touching Astrid's hair. But the peace of the night was thin, like ice on a spring pond. A heavy knock echoed against the iron-bound door of the ship house. Astrid woke with a start, her hand flying to Einar's rusty axe. Kael, a voice called from outside, a voice that sounded like grinding stones. Open the door, Commander. The Brotherhood has found their lost property. Signy stood up, the heat in her palms beginning to tingle. Despite her oath, Kael stood before the door, his blade drawn, his back to the child. Stay behind me. Signy, the sea has come to claim its debt.